The Arizona Territory sun beat down mercilessly on the dusty trading post, turning the air thick as molasses. Sarah Whitehawk pressed herself against the rough wooden wall, her fingers trembling as they clutched the silver locket, the last thing her mother had given her before the fever took her. Inside the store, she could hear the trader's gruff voice haggling over pelts. Her stomach hadn't seen food in 3 days. She was Apache on her mother's side, white on her father's, belonging fully to neither world. When her father died 6 months ago, his ranch hands had scattered like tumbleweeds, and the bank wasted no time posting foreclosure notices. Then came Marcus Thornton, the neighboring rancher who'd always looked at her like she was livestock to be acquired. He'd made his intentions clear: marry him or starve. 2 nights ago, she'd chosen the latter, fleeing into the wilderness with nothing but the clothes on her back and her mother's locket. Now, standing in the shade of the trading post's overhang, Sarah knew she'd reached the end. The locket or starvation. Those were her choices. She pushed through the door, the bell jingling cheerfully, a sound that mocked her desperation. If you're enjoying this tale from the Wild West, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It truly means everything to us and motivates us to bring you more quality stories like this one. Your support helps keep these stories alive. Thank you so much. The trader reached for the locket, but before his thick fingers could close around it, a shadow fell across the counter. That won't be necessary. Sarah's head snapped up. The man who'd spoken stood well over 6 feet, with shoulders that seemed to fill the doorway behind her. He wore dusty leather chaps over dark pants, a worn cotton shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, and a black hat that shadowed eyes the color of a summer storm, gray with flecks of blue. A scar ran from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone, giving him a dangerous look that should have frightened her. Strangely, it didn't. "James Mackenzie," the trader said, his tone shifting to something resembling respect. "Didn't expect to see you in town today." "Put together supplies," James said, his gaze never leaving Sarah's face. "Enough for 2 weeks. Flour, salt, coffee, dried beef, beans. Add some fabric, something sturdy." He finally looked at the trader. "Put it on my account, Henry." Sarah's spine stiffened. "I don't need your charity, Mr. Mackenzie." Those storm-gray eyes returned to her, and she saw something unexpected in them. Understanding, not pity. "Didn't figure you did, but I do need help at my ranch. Cook left last month to get married, and I can't boil water without burning it." "You can read and write?" The question pierced her like an arrow. Sarah's cheeks burned with shame as she dropped her gaze. "I can't read, sir. My father, he didn't believe in educating half-breed daughters. But I can listen, I can learn, and I can cook. My mother taught me that before she passed." The silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then James Mackenzie did something that changed everything. He took off his hat, revealing dark hair touched with premature silver at the temples, and met her eyes as an equal. "Ma'am, I've got a 1,000-acre ranch that needs running, and I've got a library full of books I've read 100 times. Seems to me we could help each other. You cook, keep the house, and I'll teach you to read every evening after supper. Fair trade, room, board, and wages. No charity involved, just honest work." Sarah studied his face, searching for the catch, the hidden price. But those gray eyes held only straightforward sincerity. Still, years of hard lessons made her cautious. "I won't be anyone's property, Mr. Mackenzie. If I work for you, it's as an employee, nothing more." "Wouldn't have it any other way, miss." He paused, waiting. Whitehawk, Sarah Whitehawk. Miss Whitehawk. He extended his hand. You have my word as a rancher and a former cavalry scout. You work, I pay. You want to leave? You leave. No questions, no obligations beyond honest labor. Sarah looked at his outstretched hand, calloused, scarred, but steady as bedrock. She thought of Marcus Thornton's grabbing hands, of the 3 days she'd spent hiding in arroyos and drinking from muddy streams, of the gnawing emptiness in her belly. Then she thought of something else, the hope of learning to read, of having a roof over her head earned by her own work, of being treated like a person instead of a problem. She clasped his hand. His grip was firm but careful, as though he understood how fragile her trust was. Then we have an agreement, Mr. Mackenzie. Call me James. Mr. Mackenzie was my father, and he's been dead 10 years. He turned to the trader. Henry, add a bedroll and a proper coat to that order. Nights get cold. As they waited for the supplies to be gathered, James leaned against the counter with an easy confidence that spoke of a man comfortable in his own skin. Fair warning, Miss Whitehawk. My ranch is 15 miles from town, up in the foothills. It's isolated, beautiful, but lonely. I've got 3 ranch hands who bunk in the barn. Good men, respectful. We run cattle and break horses. It's hard work, but it's honest. I'm not afraid of hard work, Mr. James. He smiled then, just a slight curve of his mouth, but it transformed his face from stern to almost kind. I didn't figure you were. Woman who'd rather starve than sell her mother's locket isn't afraid of much. Sarah's hand flew to the locket at her throat. How did you? I notice things. Part of my old job. He nodded toward the silver chain. Scout's habit. And for what it's worth, I'm glad you didn't have to sell it. Some things shouldn't have a price. The journey to the Mackenzie Ranch took 4 hours on horseback. James had provided a gentle mare named Willow, and though Sarah's riding skills were rusty from months of poverty, the horse seemed to sense her nervousness and moved with patient care. They rode through land that shifted from desert scrub to rolling grassland to pine-forested foothills, each mile more beautiful than the last. James didn't push conversation, but he pointed out landmarks, a distinctive rock formation, a reliable water source, the distant smoke from a neighboring ranch 10 miles north. He was teaching her the land, she realized, giving her the knowledge she'd need to survive here. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, they crested a rise, and Sarah caught her breath. The Mackenzie Ranch sprawled across a high valley, protected by pine-covered hills on 3 sides. A sturdy 2-story house, built of honey-colored logs, sat at the heart of it, with a wraparound porch that seemed to invite a person to sit and watch the world. Behind it stood a large barn, several corrals, and a bunkhouse. A creek glittered in the late afternoon light, winding through pastures where cattle grazed peacefully. It's beautiful, Sarah whispered. It's home, James said simply. Or it will be, if you decide to stay. They rode down to the house, where 3 ranch hands emerged from the barn, weather-beaten men with curious but not unkind eyes. James made quick introductions. Tom, the oldest, with a gray beard and a gentle manner. Pete, middle-aged and taciturn. And young Billy, barely 20, who blushed when he tipped his hat to Sarah. Miss Whitehawk will be our new cook and housekeeper, James announced. Anyone has a problem with that? You can collect your pay and move on. The men exchanged glances, but nodded their agreement. Tom even smiled. Ma'am, If you can make something besides James's burnt beans, we'll build you a throne." That first evening, Sarah explored the house with wonder. It was clean, but clearly neglected by a man who spent his days outdoors. The kitchen was well equipped, the pantry now stocked with the supplies from town. Upstairs, James showed her to a bedroom with a real bed, clean linens, and a window that overlooked the valley. Washrooms across the hall. I'm at the other end. You'll have privacy. Door has a lock if you want it. He paused at the threshold. I know you have no reason to trust me yet, Miss Whitehawk. I know you've probably had men make promises they didn't keep. So I'll just say this, you're safe here. You have my word. Something in his tone, weary but sincere, made her believe him. Thank you, James, for everything. He nodded, then seemed to remember something. Oh, one more thing. Library's downstairs, off the main room. Books are yours to look at any time. And after supper tomorrow, if you're willing, we'll start with the alphabet. After he left, Sarah sat on the edge of the bed, the first real bed she'd slept in for 6 months, and let herself cry. Not from sadness, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being somewhere safe. The next morning, Sarah woke to birdsong and the smell of pine coming through her open window. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then it all came back. James, the ranch, the promise of safety and purpose. She dressed quickly in her old calico dress, wishing she had something better, and headed downstairs. In the kitchen, she found coffee already made and a note in strong, slanted handwriting. Gone to check fence lines. Back by noon. Make yourself at home. Jay, make yourself at home. The words settled something in her chest. She set to work exploring the kitchen, planning meals with the supplies available. By the time James and the hands came in for the midday dinner, she had biscuits, fried salt pork, beans seasoned with wild onions she'd found growing near the creek, and coffee that didn't taste like mud. Tom nearly wept. Miss Whitehawk, I take back every doubt I had. This is heaven. Even taciturn Pete managed a right good, ma'am. James said nothing, but he had 2 helpings of everything, and when his eyes met hers across the table, she saw approval and something else. Gratitude, maybe, or respect. After the men returned to work, Sarah cleaned the kitchen and then, drawn by curiosity, ventured into the library James had mentioned. It was a small room, lined with shelves, every inch packed with books. She ran her fingers over the spines, seeing only incomprehensible symbols. The titles might as well have been written in starlight for all the meaning they held. But they were beautiful. Leather-bound, cloth-covered, some new, and some clearly old and treasured. She carefully pulled one from the shelf, a slim volume with a green cover, and opened it. The pages smelled of paper and dust and possibility. That's Whitman. Leaves of Grass. Sarah jumped, nearly dropping the book. James stood in the doorway, hat in hand, watching her with those storm-gray eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. You're not trespassing, Sarah. I told you the books were yours. He moved into the room, taking the volume gently from her hands. This one's poetry, about America, about ordinary people being extraordinary. I think you'd like it, once you can read it. He set it aside carefully, then selected another book, thinner, with bright illustrations visible on some pages. But we'll start with this, McGuffey's Primer. It's how children learn. No shame in beginning at the beginning. That evening, after supper was cleaned up and the hands had retired to the bunkhouse, Sarah sat at the kitchen table while James lit 2 oil lamps to drive back the gathering darkness. He opened the primer and showed her the first page. We'll start with the alphabet, 26 letters that make up every word in the English language. He pointed to the first letter. This is A. It says ah, like an apple. For the next hour, James walked her through the letters with the patience of a saint. He didn't talk down to her, didn't make her feel stupid for not knowing what children learned. When she struggled with the difference between B and D, he simply showed her a trick for remembering. When she got frustrated, he told her about his own struggles learning to track as a young scout, how he'd nearly given up before his Apache mentor taught him to see the story the land was telling. "You learned from the Apache?" she asked, surprised. "Spent 3 years with them. That's where I got this." He touched the scar on his face. "And where I learned that the best teachers are the ones who respect what you bring to the learning, not just what you don't know yet." Something shifted between them in that moment. A recognition of shared experience, perhaps, or simply the beginning of trust. The days fell into a rhythm. Sarah woke early to make breakfast, prepared lunches, had dinner ready when the men came in from their work. In between, she cleaned, mended, and began to impose order on the house's bachelor chaos. The hands treated her with careful respect. And James kept his distance, physically, but was always present in small ways. He fixed a squeaky door hinge in her room without being asked. He brought her wildflowers from the meadow, saying only that they reminded him of the ones his mother used to pick. He always knocked before entering a room she was in. And every evening, after supper, they sat at the kitchen table with the primer, working through letters and then simple words. Sarah proved a quick study, hungry for knowledge. Within 2 weeks, she could write her own name. The first time she did it without his help, James's smile was like the sun breaking through clouds. "You're a natural, Sarah. At this rate, you'll be reading Whitman by winter." "I can't wait," she said, and meant it. But she found herself looking forward to these lessons for another reason too. The quiet intimacy of sitting together while darkness pressed against the windows. The way James's voice softened when he read example sentences. The accidental brush of their hands when they both reached for the pencil. She was beginning to feel something dangerous. Something she'd sworn she'd never feel again after watching her father's grief over her mother's death. After seeing what men like Marcus Thornton thought women were for. She was beginning to feel safe. And more than that, she was beginning to hope. The warning came on a Tuesday morning in late September. Tom rode in hard from the south pasture, his horse lathered and his face grim. James was in the barn, and Sarah was hanging laundry when she heard the commotion. "Boss, we got trouble!" She dropped the sheet she'd been hanging and ran toward the barn, arriving just as James emerged, his expression shifting from calm to alert in an instant. "What is it?" "Riders, 6 of them, coming up the valley road." They got the look of men hunting something, or someone. Tom's eyes flicked to Sarah. Lead riders wearing a fancy black suit and riding a blood bay stallion. Sarah's legs went weak. Marcus Thornton. James's jaw hardened. "Get inside the house, Sarah. Now." "James, you don't understand. I understand plenty." His voice was steel, wrapped in velvet. "You're under my protection now. He wants to talk to you, he goes through me. Now get inside and stay away from the windows." Every instinct screamed at her to run, but something in James's absolute certainty made her obey. She fled to the house, but instead of hiding, she went to the kitchen window where she could see the front yard. 6 riders came up the road, just as Tom had said. Marcus Thornton led them, a man in his 40s, handsome in a cold way, with dark hair and eyes like chips of obsidian. The 5 men with him looked like hired guns, all wearing sidearms with the ease of frequent use. James stood in front of the barn, utterly still. Tom, Pete, and Billy flanked him, all armed. The message was clear: you're not welcome here. Thornton reined in his horse 20 feet from James, his lip curling in what might have been a smile. "Mackenzie, heard you hired my runaway bride." "Heard wrong. I hired a cook. What she was before she came here isn't my business or yours. That half-breed killed my prize dog when she ran off. I've got property rights." "She's not property." James's voice cracked like a whip. "And if your dog tried to stop a woman from leaving, you probably deserve to lose it." Thornton's face reddened. "You've got no right to harbor my—" "She's a free woman, Thornton. You never married her, never had any legal claim. And if you're thinking of making trouble, remember that I've got 3 witnesses here and a reputation with the territorial marshal. How's yours?" The 2 men stared at each other, and Sarah held her breath. She'd seen Marcus's temper before, had felt it in the bruises he'd given her father's old mare when she stumbled, in the way he'd grabbed her arm hard enough to leave marks when she'd refused his first proposal. Finally, Thornton smiled, a terrible expression. "This isn't over, Mackenzie. That woman owes me for the damage she caused. I'll get what's mine." "She doesn't owe you a damn thing. And if you set foot on my land again uninvited, I'll shoot you for trespassing. We clear?" For a long moment, Sarah thought Thornton would do something stupid. Then he yanked his horse's head around and spurred it back down the road, his men following. But before he disappeared around the bend, he turned in his saddle and locked eyes with the window where Sarah stood. The promise in that look made her blood run cold. When the riders were gone, James strode to the house. Sarah met him at the door, her hands shaking despite her best efforts to stay calm. "I'm sorry. I've brought trouble to your home." "Sarah, look at me." He waited until she met his eyes. "You didn't bring trouble. Trouble was already chasing you, and now you've got people standing between you and it. That's what we do here. We protect our own." "I'm not—" "You are. The moment you set foot on this ranch, you became one of us." His hand came up, as if to touch her face, then dropped. "But I won't lie to you. Thornton's not going to give up easy. Men like him, they don't see women as people. They see them as territory to claim. We need to be smart." "I'll go to California. Or maybe—" "The hell you will." The vehemence in his voice startled them both. He took a breath, visibly collecting himself. "Sorry, but Sarah, running won't fix this. He'll just chase you, and next time you might not land somewhere safe. Better to face it here where you've got backup." Sarah wanted to argue, but the truth was she was tired of running, tired of being afraid. And standing here, looking at this scarred, steady man who defended her to a dangerous enemy without hesitation, she felt something shift in her chest, a tentative, fragile thing that might have been the beginning of trust, or something more dangerous than that. "Okay," she whispered, "I'll stay. But James, be careful. Marcus doesn't fight fair. Neither do I when I'm protecting something that matters." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning neither quite dared to examine. That night, James insisted on teaching her to shoot. They walked out to a clearing behind the house as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. James carried a rifle and his Colt revolver, and his expression was serious. "I don't want you to need this, but if Thornton comes back when I'm not around, I need to know you can defend yourself." He showed her how to hold the pistol, how to sight down the barrel, how to squeeze the trigger slowly, rather than jerking it. The first shot kicked back harder than she expected, and she stumbled. James's hands came to her shoulders, steadying her, and for a moment they stood frozen. His warmth at her back, his hands gentle but firm, his breath stirring her hair. "Go slow," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "Take your time. There's no rush." They practiced until dark, and by the end, Sarah could hit a target at 15 yards more often than not. As they walked back to the house, James still carried both weapons, but Sarah felt different, less like prey, more like someone who might survive. "Thank you," she said, "for everything. I know you didn't sign up for this kind of trouble when you hired me." James stopped walking, turning to face her in the twilight. "Sarah, I need you to understand something. When I saw you in that trading post, I didn't just see someone who needed help. I saw a woman with enough courage to starve rather than compromise her principles. I saw strength and dignity and pride, even when you had nothing left. That's not the kind of person you walk away from." "James, I'm not finished." He stepped closer, and in the fading light, his gray eyes were almost silver. "I told you I'd never hurt you, and I meant it. But I need you to know you're safe here. Not because you work for me, but because you deserve to be safe. Every person does. And if Thornton or anyone else tries to take that from you, they'll have to go through me first." Sarah's throat tightened with emotion she couldn't name. Men had made her promises before. Her father had promised to always protect her, then died. Marcus had promised to care for her, then shown his true colors. But James's words felt different. They felt like bedrock, solid and unmovable. "I believe you," she said softly, "and that terrifies me." Understanding flashed across his face. Because believing is dangerous. Because losing what you believe in is worse than never having it at all. James nodded slowly, and in that moment, Sarah knew he understood, really understood, the shape of her fear. Because he'd felt it too. Whatever had carved that scar into his face had also carved scars into his heart. The kind that didn't show, but never fully healed. "Then we'll just have to make sure neither of us loses," he said. "Come on." But he also continued Sarah's lessons with unwavering dedication. And slowly, painfully, the marks on the page began to transform into words in her mind. The first time she read a complete sentence from the primer without help, James's face lit up with such genuine joy that Sarah laughed out loud. "What?" he asked, grinning. "I've never seen you smile like that. You should do it more often." "Haven't had much reason to, last few years." "You're changing that." The words seemed to surprise him as much as they surprised her. A slight flush crept up his neck, visible even in the lamplight, and he quickly bent over the book again. But Sarah had seen it, that flash of vulnerability, of wanting, and God help her, she felt it too. Felt it when their fingers brushed passing the pencil. Felt it when she caught him watching her hang laundry, his expression soft and unguarded before he noticed her looking. Felt it in the way he always made sure she had the chair closest to the stove on cold evenings, the way he brought her interesting stones or feathers he'd found while checking fence lines. Little gifts given without words. They were courting, she realized. Slowly, carefully. Like two. James had given her a journal, and she'd started writing in it every night, documenting this strange new life where she felt valued and safe and something very close to happy. Then, on a crisp afternoon, when James and the hands were driving cattle to winter pasture, Sarah heard hoofbeats. Just one horse this time. She looked out the kitchen window and saw Marcus Thornton riding up alone, his hands conspicuously away from his weapons. Her heart hammered, but she forced herself to stay calm. James had taught her to shoot. The rifle was in the house. She wasn't helpless anymore. She stepped out onto the porch. Can't a man check on his intended bride? I was never your bride. I never agreed to marry you. Your father is dead. And even if he weren't, I'm not livestock to be bartered. Sarah kept her voice steady, her hands loose at her sides, ready to run if necessary. Leave, now, before James gets back. Ah yes, Mackenzie, your noble protector. Thornton's smile turned ugly. You think he's different? He's using you just like I would, Sarah. Just prettier lies. You don't know anything about him. I know he's got a past. You know he killed a man once? Shot him dead in a fair fight. But dead's still dead. You really think a man like that is 10 times the man you'll ever be? Sarah's voice rang with conviction. James treats me like a human being. He's teaching me to read, to defend myself, to stand on my own. What did you ever offer me besides bruises and servitude? Thornton's face darkened. You ungrateful half-breed. The click of a rifle being cocked froze them both. Sarah turned to see James on horseback at the edge of the yard, his rifle aimed steadily at Thornton's chest. His face was carved from stone, but his eyes blazed with cold fury. Get off my land, now. I don't care. You came to my ranch when you knew I was gone, approached a woman under my protection, and called her names I won't repeat. That's 3 reasons to shoot you. Want to give me a 4th? Thornton's hand twitched toward his gun, and Sarah's breath caught. But then he seemed to think better of it. This isn't over. It is. Come back here again, and I'll shoot you on sight. That's not a threat, Thornton. It's a legal promise. I'll swear to the marshal you were trespassing with intent to harm. And since everyone in town knows you've been harassing Miss Whitehawk, they'll believe me. James nudged his horse closer, and his voice dropped to something even more dangerous than a shout. She's mine to protect now, and I protect what's mine. The words sent a thrill through Sarah that she had no business feeling. Thornton mounted his horse, his face twisted with rage. But as he rode away, he called back. Winter's coming, Mackenzie. Long, dark nights. Can't watch her every second. When he was gone, James dismounted in one smooth motion and strode to Sarah. Did he touch you? No, I was ready to defend myself if I needed to. I know you were. I could see it. His hands came up to her shoulders, and for the first time, he touched her intentionally, with clear purpose. Sarah, I need you to understand something. When I said you're mine to protect, I didn't mean, I know what you meant. She looked up at him, and the words came before she could stop them. But James, what if I want to be? Not your property, never that, but yours in the way that matters, where you choose each other, where you stand together. His gray eyes searched her face, and she saw hope and fear warring in them. Sarah, I'm not. He took a shaky breath. I've got blood on my hands. I've done things, seen things. The man I killed that Thornton mentioned, he deserved it. He was beating a woman to death, and I stopped him. But I still see his face sometimes. I'm not the hero you might think I am. I don't need a hero, Sarah said softly. I need a partner. Someone who sees me as an equal. Someone who respects me enough to teach me to be strong, not just keep me weak and dependent. That's you, James. You're exactly who I think you are." He stared at her for a long moment, his hands warm on her shoulders, his face inches from hers. Then, slowly, carefully, he raised one hand to cup her cheek. His thumb brushed her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. "If we do this," he said, his voice rough, "I need you to tell me if I ever hurt you. Not just physically. I'd cut off my own hand before I'd strike you. But if I'm too much, too demanding, if you need space, you have to tell me. Because, Sarah, I'm falling for you. And if I fall all the way, I don't think I could survive being the thing you're afraid of." Sarah turned her face into his palm, letting herself feel the safety of his touch. "Then we fall together, and we trust each other enough to speak the truth, always. Deal?" "Deal." He bent his head, and Sarah rose on her toes, and their lips met in a kiss that was equal parts desperation and promise. It was gentle and fierce at once, full of all the words they hadn't said, all the feelings they'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, James rested his forehead against hers. "I should probably court you properly. Flowers, dinner, asking permission. James, you've been courting me for 6 weeks, and I don't need anyone's permission. I choose this. I choose you." His smile was like sunrise. "Then I choose you too, Sarah Whitehawk. And God help anyone who tries to take you from me." That night, their reading lesson turned into something else. James read to her from Whitman, his deep voice turning the poetry into music. "I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume, you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you." "That's beautiful," Sarah whispered when he finished. "It's about equality, about every person being valuable, being connected. It made me think of you, about how you've never asked me to be less than I am, and I'll never ask that of you either." They talked late into the night, sharing pieces of themselves they'd kept hidden. James told her about his childhood on a failing farm, about joining the cavalry to escape poverty, about the Apache woman who'd saved his life and taught him to track. Sarah told him about her mother's death, her father's grief-driven neglect, the suffocating feeling of being trapped between two worlds and wholly accepted by neither. "You're accepted here," James said, "by me, by this place, exactly as you are." It was past midnight when Sarah finally climbed the stairs to her room, her heart so full it ached. She lay in bed, listening to the wind in the pines, and let herself believe, truly believe, that she might have found a home. November brought the first snow, dusting the valley with white that made everything look clean and new. Sarah's reading had progressed to the point where she could manage simple novels, and James had started reading Little Women to her in the evenings, the two of them sitting close on the settee, sharing warmth and companionship. The threat of Thornton seemed to recede with the advancing winter. Perhaps, Sarah thought hopefully, he'd given up. Perhaps they were finally safe. She should have known better. It was a Tuesday morning when Billy came running from the barn, his face pale. "Miss Whitehawk, something's wrong with the horses." Sarah ran to the barn, arriving just behind James and Tom. Inside, 3 horses were down, thrashing and frothing at the mouth. James took one look and cursed viciously. Poison. Someone's poisoned the feed. They worked frantically, but by noon, all 3 horses were dead. The loss hit the ranch hard. Horses were wealth and livelihood in equal measure. But it was the message that hurt more. Someone had crept onto the ranch in the night, close enough to the house to reach the barn, and done deliberate harm. It was Thornton, Sarah said, her voice hollow. It had to be. James's face was grim. Maybe. Probably. But I can't prove it, which means the law can't touch him. That night, James increased the watch again, but everyone knew the damage was done. Thornton had shown them their vulnerability, and if he could poison horses, he could do worse. 2 days later, fire broke out in the hay barn. They caught it early. Pete had been on watch and smelled smoke, and managed to save most of the structure. But it was another message. I can reach you. I can hurt you. You're not safe. Sarah found James after they'd finished damping down the last embers, his face streaked with soot, his eyes hollow with exhaustion and rage. I'm leaving, she said. Tomorrow. This has to stop. The hell you are! He grabbed her shoulders, not roughly, but firmly. Sarah, don't you see? The moment you run, he wins. You spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, and he gets to feel like he's taught you a lesson. Is that what you want? I want you safe. I want this ranch safe. James, he's going to keep escalating. Then we escalate too. His jaw was set in a way she'd come to recognize as unshakable determination. Tomorrow, I'm riding into town. I'm going to talk to the marshal, get a formal complaint filed. Then I'm going to pay a visit to Marcus Thornton and make him understand that if anything else happens on this ranch, I'm coming for him personally, legal or not. That's dangerous. So is doing nothing. He pulled her closer, his soot-stained hands gentle on her face. Sarah, I'm not losing you. Not to him, not to fear. We stand and fight together. That's what partners do. Looking into his storm-gray eyes, seeing the absolute conviction there, Sarah felt her resolve firm. He was right. Running would only delay the inevitable. Better to face it here together. Together, she agreed. But James, be careful, please. Always am. He kissed her forehead, leaving a smudge of soot. Now come on. We both need to clean up, and you've got reading practice. I think you're ready to try reading to me for a change. The next morning, James rode to town with Tom, both men armed and alert. Sarah tried to keep herself busy with chores, but anxiety gnawed at her. The hours crawled by. Pete and Billy stayed close to the house, their presence comforting, but also a reminder of the danger. It was nearly sunset when Sarah heard the sound of multiple horses approaching. She grabbed the rifle and positioned herself by the window, her heart pounding. But when the riders came into view, she sagged with relief. James and Tom rode in front, followed by 3 men wearing marshals' badges. They dismounted, and James caught Sarah's eye through the window, giving her a small nod. Safe. It's handled. The marshals stayed for 2 hours, taking statements, examining the dead horses and the damaged barn. The head marshal, a grizzled man named Carson, was matter-of-fact but sympathetic. Problem is proving it was Thornton, but I'll pay him a visit, make it clear he's on notice. And Mackenzie, you've got the right to defend your property. If you catch someone in the act, the law's on your side. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Official recognition of the threat, official permission to defend themselves. After the marshals left, James gathered everyone together. I know we're all tired. I know this isn't the peaceful winter we hoped for. But we're a family here, and families protect each other. Anyone wants to leave, I'll give you full wages and a recommendation. No hard feelings. Tom, Pete, and Billy exchanged glances. Then Tom spoke for all of them. Boss, we're not going anywhere. Miss Whitehawk's got a right to be here in peace, and we've all got a stake in making sure Thornton doesn't think he can terrorize folks." That night, after everyone else had gone to bed, Sarah and James sat in the library, not reading, just being together. James stared into the fire, his expression troubled. "I should have seen this coming, should have been more careful." "You can't predict what a vindictive man will do," Sarah said. "And James, I need you to know, whatever happens, I don't regret coming here. You've given me more than safety. You've given me dignity and purpose and you." He turned to her, and in the firelight, his scarred face was beautiful. "Sarah, I love you. I know it's too soon. I know we're in the middle of trouble, but I need you to know you're the best thing that's happened to me in years, maybe ever." The words unlocked something in Sarah's chest. "I love you too, and I'm not going anywhere. We'll face Thornton and whatever else comes together." He kissed her then, and it was different from their first kiss. Deeper, more desperate, full of the knowledge that time might be running out. When they finally broke apart, James's voice was rough with emotion. "Marry me. Not someday, not when things are settled. Now, tomorrow, I want you to be my wife, in law and in truth." Sarah's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears, joyful tears. Yes, God, yes. They married 3 days later in a simple ceremony at the ranch, with Tom, Pete, and Billy as witnesses, and the circuit preacher who happened to be passing through town. Sarah wore a dress that Tom's wife had sent over, pale blue calico with white lace at the collar. James wore his best suit, and when he saw her walking toward him, his eyes shone with emotion. The vows were traditional, but when James said, "I do," he added, "And I promise to honor you, cherish you, and stand beside you as an equal from this day until my last." Sarah's voice was steady when she replied, "And I promise to be your partner in all things, to trust you and challenge you and love you for the rest of my life." When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, James kissed her with such tenderness that Sarah forgot, for a moment, that danger still lurked beyond their valley. That night, in the bedroom that was now theirs, James was careful and gentle, asking permission with every touch, making sure she was comfortable and willing. And when they finally came together, it was with such mutual joy and trust that Sarah wept. "Did I hurt you?" James asked immediately, alarm in his voice. "No, God, no, I'm happy. I didn't think I'd ever feel this happy again." He gathered her close, and they lay tangled together, listening to the wind outside and the crackle of the fire. Two people who'd found each other against all odds. "I'm going to keep you safe," James murmured into her hair, "whatever it takes." Sarah believed him, but she also knew that some things were beyond anyone's control. And Marcus Thornton was a patient man, willing to wait for the perfect moment to strike. That moment came 2 weeks later, in the dead of winter. James and the hands had gone to the North Range to rescue cattle stranded by a sudden snowstorm. Sarah had begged to go with them, but James had insisted she stay at the ranch. The storm was too dangerous, the work too hard. She'd agreed reluctantly, making him promise to be careful. She was in the kitchen, kneading bread dough, when she heard the front door open. Thinking James had returned early, she called out, "You're back soon. Did you find the—" The words died in her throat. Marcus Thornton stood in the doorway, snow melting on his shoulders, a gun in his hand. "Hello, Sarah, or should I say, Mrs. Mackenzie? Heard about your marriage. Congratulations." His smile was poison. "Now here's what's going to happen. You're going to come with me, quietly, or I'm going to wait here for your husband to return and put a bullet in his head. Your choice." Sarah's mind raced. The rifle was upstairs. The pistol was in the bedroom. She had nothing but a rolling pin and her wits. And if she called for help, Thornton might shoot her before anyone arrived. But James had taught her to be strong. James had taught her to fight. "I'm not going anywhere with you, Marcus." His eyes narrowed. "Don't be stupid, girl. I'll kill him. I'll kill all of them. You think I won't? I think you're a coward who hurts women and poisons horses because you're too weak to face a fair fight." Sarah kept her voice steady, kept him talking. "I think James was right about you. You see women as territory, not people. And I think you're about to learn what a mistake that is." She threw the rolling pin at his head. Thornton ducked, and Sarah ran, not away, but toward him, catching him off balance. She'd learned some things from Billy about brawling, and she used them now, going for his gun hand, scratching at his eyes, fighting like her life depended on it. Because it did. They crashed into the furniture, and the gun went off. A deafening boom in the enclosed space. Pain seared across Sarah's ribs, but she didn't let go, didn't stop fighting. If she stopped, she died. If she stopped, James came home to her corpse. So she fought. Thornton backhanded her, and stars exploded in her vision. She tasted blood. But she'd gotten her hand on the gun, was wrestling it away from him, her fingers slippery with blood. His or hers, she couldn't tell. Then she heard hoofbeats, and James's voice, sharp with alarm. "Sarah!" Thornton heard it too. He shoved her away hard, and Sarah fell, striking her head on the table corner. The world went gray and tilting. Through the haze, she saw Thornton raising the gun, aiming at the door where James would enter. "No," Sarah gasped, and with the last of her strength, she grabbed a fireplace poker and swung it at Thornton's knee. He went down with a scream, and the gun fired wild, the bullet smashing through a window. Then James was there, bursting through the door with his own gun drawn, taking in the scene in an instant. Sarah bleeding on the floor, Thornton down but not out, the broken furniture and blood. "Drop it," James said, and his voice was death itself. "Drop the gun or I'll kill you where you sit." Thornton looked at James, at Sarah, back at James. Whatever he saw in James's face made him carefully set the gun down and raise his hands. "Get out," James said. "Get off my land and out of this territory. If I ever see you again, I'll shoot you dead and claim self-defense. And you know what? Everyone will believe me." Thornton stood, limping heavily. At the door, he looked back at Sarah with such hatred that she flinched. "This isn't—" "It is," James cut him off. "It's over. You lost. Now get out before I change my mind about letting you live." When Thornton was gone, James holstered his gun and dropped to his knees beside Sarah. "Jesus, Sarah, you're bleeding." "It's not bad," she said, though her ribs screamed and her head throbbed. "Just a graze. I'm okay, because you taught me to fight." He gathered her up carefully, his hands shaking. "You magnificent, terrifying woman. You could have been killed. So could you. That's why I fought him." Sarah cupped his face with bloody hands. "Together, remember? We stand together." James kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips, gentle kisses that tasted like relief and love. Together, always together. The doctor came from town and confirmed that the bullet had only grazed Sarah's ribs. Painful, but not serious. The marshal came too, took statements, and left with the promise to arrest Thornton if he showed his face in the territory again. The consensus was that Thornton was probably halfway to Mexico by now, his tail between his legs. Sarah spent a week recovering. with James hovering over her like a worried bear. She bore it patiently, knowing he needed to reassure himself she was truly all right. And gradually, the fear faded, replaced by a quiet triumph. She'd stood up to her demon. She'd fought and survived. And she'd done it not by being saved, but by being strong. Christmas came, and the ranch was peaceful. Sarah had finished reading Little Women on her own and had started David Copperfield. She'd written a letter to the wife of one of her father's old friends, the first letter she'd ever composed without help. She learned to ride well enough to check fence lines with James. She was building a life, not just living one. On Christmas Eve, they sat in the library, fire crackling, snow falling softly outside. Sarah read aloud from Whitman, the words no longer mysterious symbols, but beautiful thoughts made visible. I am large, I contain multitudes. You do contain multitudes, James said softly when she finished. Strength and tenderness, courage and vulnerability. You're everything, Sarah. So are you. She set the book aside and moved into his arms. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. For believing I was worth saving. You saved yourself, James said. I just gave you the space to do it. They sat in comfortable silence. Two people who'd found each other in the wilderness and built something beautiful from their scars. Outside, the snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in white, erasing old tracks and making way for new ones. Spring came eventually, as it always did. The snow melted, the grass greened, and life returned to the valley. Sarah's garden flourished, and she started teaching Billy and Pete to read in the evenings, sharing the gift James had given her. The ranch prospered, and so did they. Two people learning daily what it meant to be partners, to be equals, to be loved. One evening in May, as the sun set over the mountains, Sarah and James sat on the porch, watching the sky turn gold and crimson. Sarah rested her hand on her belly, where a new life was just beginning to make itself known. I'm scared, she admitted. What if I'm not a good mother? What if you'll be magnificent, James said firmly. Because you're strong and brave, and you never give up. And because you won't be doing it alone. We're partners, remember? Sarah leaned into him, breathing in the scent of leather and pine and home. Together, always together. As the stars began to appear, one by one, in the darkening sky, Sarah thought about the journey that had brought her here. From desperation to hope, from fear to love, from barely surviving to truly living. She thought about the girl she'd been, standing in that trading post with nothing but a locket and desperation, and the woman she'd become, standing on her own land beside a man who saw her as an equal. James, she said softly, read to me? He smiled and pulled a slim volume from his pocket, the Whitman he always carried. And as the night gathered around them, safe and warm and home, James's deep voice filled the air with poetry. I celebrate myself and sing myself, and what I assume you shall assume, for every atom belonging to me as good belongs to you. And in that moment, Sarah knew with absolute certainty, this was what happy looked like. This was what home felt like. This was what love was, not perfect, not without scars, but real and strong and worth fighting for. Together, they'd built something beautiful from the ashes of their pasts, and together, they'd face whatever the future brought, partners in all things, equals in love, survivors who'd learned that the strongest thing a person can do is trust someone else to catch them when they fall. Because that's what they did. Every day, in 1,000 small ways, and a few large ones. They caught each other. They held each other up. They were home. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're enjoying this tale from. Are you listening at home, during your commute, or perhaps while working? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. What did you think of Sarah and James's journey? Your feedback means the world to us.